Good afternoon, Will Abreu. I am delighted to have you with us on our booth.
It's so great to be here, Carol. Love the Chyron team. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, you are the head of broadcasting for OS Studios. Tell us a little bit about OS Studios in general, the type of work you do, and what makes you different from other production houses.
Of course, OS stands for Operating System. OS Studios itself is a creative agency that services multiple brands. We're part of the Project Worldwide network, and what we really specialize in doing is bringing brands into the world of gaming and esports. Our team is incredibly young, but also endemic and authentic to the world of gaming. And for brands that want to really speak to demographics that have gaming in their blood, we are the people to go to.
So it's important to have those production skills, but also important to understand what your customers are trying to do and why, and the passion behind it. Now, as head of broadcast, what does your role encompass with OS?
As head of broadcast, everything that we put out live falls under my purview. So we do a lot of both live shows and live in-person events now that that's coming back. And we've been fortunate enough to also benefit from the great pivot of the last 2 years and bringing brands together through remote solutions and online shows.
You've done a lot of work. Now, I know that you've had some Chyron gear for quite some time, not necessarily what we've been working with you recently, but you have our Prime graphics product, if I'm not mistaken. What, if anything, have you done with that?
We've made great use of our Prime system, and also the black belt from your Chyron's program that runs it. Shout out to Daniel Higgins. We have made use of the playout for nearly every one of our shows. Esports relies heavily on bringing real-time stats, scores, and supplementary graphics to the viewer. It's not always as easy as viewing a baseball game or a football game where you can see exactly what's going on, and every game has different levels of viewer friendliness, let's say. And using our graphics playout, we've been able to really bring the story of every game to our viewers at home. And we've both flown our operator in from his school in Michigan, and also have had him be able to remotely operate the Prime from his dorm room. So great times have been had.
That's really an awesome story. So just the way that a traditional broadcaster might use our graphics platform to tell their story, you're using it to tell that story endemically to your audience. And I love that you mentioned Dan Higgins. I love that you mentioned the Academy, because I think that ties back to what you were saying at the beginning, how you're a young team and you understand the productions that you're trying to do for your audience and how important it is to be endemic to that world. And we're all about that at Chyron. We like to use the word democratization of broadcast. We want our products and our functionalities to be accessible to anyone. So what we're talking about here is Dan Higgins, who went through our academy, was our very first black belt, and now is an OS Studios rock star. Am I correct?
He's fundamental to our operation. And just to speak on the youth of the broadcasting world coming in through it, I think one of the great pulls of esports, at least when I started coming into it, was it felt very much like punk rock. All of the tools that we used were super cheap and accessible, and it was more about what you could do with very little, as opposed to big flash and without having much substance. And that's that feeling, that like driving energy sort of persists today. And working with the Chyron team, I definitely have felt that as well, as we've worked with you guys with VSAR and with Live, so and with Prime rather. So just happy to continue that forward.
We love all our clients, but you guys are especially fun. We like what you're doing. Now, you said something, though, that I want to make sure I understand correctly. You said not so much the flash, but esports is essentially a visual thing. That's what attracts people to it. It's cool to watch. It's cool to get immersed in this world. And I know that recently you've leveraged our virtual set implementation. So how do we go from just being endemic, and I shouldn't use the word just, but being endemic, being accessible to everybody, not relying on the flash, but relying on something that's authentic, but leveling up to bringing more of the flash into that really visually oriented audience?
Yeah, I think as long as we are keeping our key touchstones in mind, bringing that flash along that path is sort of the correct and most acceptable way of doing it to the communities that we serve. And specifically with esports broadcast, at the end of the day, we are still telling human stories. There's just another layer of obscurity to jump through because we're talking about people that are on the other sides of computer monitors. We're not actually seeing these people on a field of play. And breaking down that, I guess, almost fifth wall and bringing in a virtual set and bringing our communities together with something that is, it's not a set extension. It's not a set that's been recreated. It's something completely brand new and speaks to the audience that we are servicing. That's just one more step down that path to really serving the gaming demographic, the esports demographic in a way that they appreciate.
The games themselves are not an extension of anything. They are their own immersive environment, and we're creating those immersive environments now for the presentation of esports. So let's dig into a couple recent products. Maple Story Fest. What were your challenges with that, and how did you end up landing on Chyron Virtual Set to help you with that?
So for Maple Story Fest, what that is a fan festival brought to the fan community of Maple Story by the developers Nexon. Normally they do an in-person festival. It's lots of fun. They bring their developers, they talk about what they've got planned for the next year, and of course in 2021 that couldn't happen. So they wanted to pivot to an online solution. It was called Maple Story Fest at Home, and our ask was to bring our host Jimmy Wong into essentially the world of Maple Story, and we did that by literally building elements from the game in 3D, bringing it through Unreal and the VSAR, and while that project was just absolutely well received by the community, it felt authentic and true to what they were looking for in a fan fest, and it became something that started to build our best practices when we started looking at how do we build these virtual sets going forward.
And how easy, or was it easy, to bring what you needed into the Chyron virtual set environment? Were there certain challenges you had to overcome?
Nothing in broadcast is ever easy, right? It's always legwork, even if it's just the smallest amount. But I would say that the process of bringing out our visuals from 3D, I believe it was Cinema 4D, into the VSAR was relatively painless. It just came down to a matter of tweaking and really playing between different rendering engines, whether it was Unreal with the VSAR or what we were using before in Blender and Cinema 4D. And that was just a very interesting part of the collaborative process with you guys as well, because it was the first time we had done that. We had no idea what to expect, it was a blast.
Let me make sure I understand correctly. Step one in a project such as this is really conceptualizing what it is you're trying to do, handing that vision off to a creative team, whether it's yours or another that you contract with, who uses tools that are used globally. It could be Cinema 4D, it could be any other 3D creation tool, and then that is brought into the Unreal environment, and then collaborating with our team, that's brought into our virtual set environment so that it can be used in a live production as opposed to used in post-production. And in our environment, you can then tweak as you wish. You want a little more shadow, you want something to fly through, you can make additions. So there's that part. Now the next part that I don't think we've talked about so much is what happens during the actual production, the actual play out while the production is going on. What happens there? Is it easy to drive from the panels that are set up, make changes on the fly? How does that work?
Absolutely. So the panel controller in VSAR has been just a breeze to use. Essentially what we've done is create different endpoints for cameras, and what we can do is decide how long it takes for a camera to go from point A to point B. And then once we know where we need to go and how long it's going to take to go there, we trigger those camera motions as if they were real cameras on a set. And we have those happening in real time alongside any sort of like switcher-based transitions, and we use them to really tell our stories more effectively, to indicate to our audiences like we're going someplace new, we're going someplace far away, and those camera pushes and moves, they both allow us to create an environment that breathes, that feels alive, but also allows us to get in and out effectively.
So if I'm not mistaken, this was a trackless, what we would call a trackless implementation, meaning the camera movement does not have to be tracked because you can have virtual cameras within the set to add those elements of motion.
That's correct.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Now let's move on to another project that I'm super excited about. As a marketeer, I'm always asked to prove what I'm doing and its value, so I tend to be numbers oriented sometimes. And I was just stunned to know that how many people are watching the AT&T Annihilator Cup?
I mean, we had over 70,000 just this last week in our Halo broadcast, 600,000 on the VOD within a few days. So, live to post viewership has been incredible. Last year, the Annihilator Cup was one of the most viewed Twitch properties, brand new IPs on Twitch. And our goal has always been to one-up last year's production, and bringing in a virtual set for that just inherently made that so much better compared to just being in a 2 or 3 box for 5 weeks straight. The Annihilator Cup has been an incredible project to be on.
Well, we were delighted that you selected us for that part of it. Coming off Maple Story Fest, I feel like your team and our team probably learned a lot. Why did you feel confident going ahead with us for such a big, important project that was going to have so much visibility? I mean, AT&T is the client of the Annihilator Cup, and they're your client. And so you're putting your reputation on the line when you deal with clients like that. What made you choose to continue with Chyron?
I believe it was the relentless communication that came from our partner rep that let me know that should anything happen, there's always going to be someone to pick up the phone on the other end, and that has been sort of essential to the process. Working with large clients that have very particular needs in terms of conforming to their style guides. What sort of shade of blue do we need to make this? What texture do we need to make this? Having near constant communication with the team at Chyron and with our creative team has been essential, and I knew that we could rely on that from the beginning.
That's really good to hear. Ultimately, it's people like you that drive what we do, drive how we make what we do. And as a company, our roots are in traditional broadcast, specifically news. But we really think esports is the future of how information is going to be disseminated, how people are going to be entertained. There's a lot going on there, and we're happy to play a small part in it, and we're really grateful to you well, thank you. We're really grateful to you for trusting us and including us. I want to kind of circle back to the beginning of our conversation. We talked a little bit about your role and what it encompasses. I want to know, and we talked about Dan Higgins and how he got to where he is. How did you get where you are today, and what advice would you give? I have some young people in my family. They like gaming. Parents don't always see that as a career path. What advice would you give young people if they have a passion and they want a career in this world?
Yeah, I think sort of my path was incredibly lucky. I came up as a film student at NYU. I had an internship at Major League Gaming, which is where I just sort of stayed for 10 years into my career. And I learned, I was able to tailor my film and broadcast production major to the needs of the broadcast that we had in my internship and in what would later become my job. But what really kept me at the tip of the work that I was doing compared to a lot of the people that I was working with was just passion and not being afraid to jump in, not waiting for permission to do things and just making things on my own and making mistakes. I've always been an advocate for doing things on your own, learning how to do things on the cheap and dirty so that you can emulate that when you do get into an environment that does have a budget. and that sort of creates the people that I also want to work alongside in a control room. I think that's something that that people like Dan Higgins also have in them. It's just like a passion and also just this innate curiosity of problem solving. If you want to learn how to do something, the best advice I can do is just jump in and make mistakes until you get it right.
So very much the way you become a good gamer, you figure things out, you relentlessly pursue what you're trying to do, you keep moving forward until you find a way, and then good things happen. Is that?
I'm not sure who to attribute this saying to, but there's no losing. You either win or you learn. And in broadcast, it's either you had a great show or you learned. And I think that that's something that, as long as you are okay with learning from your mistakes and learning from every single misstep and never allowing yourself to give up because of that, then you're going to have a future in esports broadcast.
I would say that's good advice for any career, and gaming is a good teacher for that kind of mindset.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time today, Will. Thanks for coming to see us here, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Vegas.
I'm already there.